Some years ago, the International Institute for Secular and Humanistic Judaism reviewed our program offerings. Were there any programs that were no longer utilized? Were there programs that we could add? I was on that committee that investigated, along with Rabbi Denise Hendlarsky and Rabbi Jeremy Kreidel, whether to develop any new programs. We realized that there were still many communities in our movement that did not have trained leaders. The rabbinic program and our leadership program both take a significant amount of commitment of time, energy, and many of our organizations are too small to pay for professional leaders, and our volunteers all have busy lives. A lot of our communities cannot provide for the basic needs of their membership: ceremonies celebrating birth, coming of age, bar mitzvah, marriage, and honoring and celebrating a person's life after they've died. Leaders in our larger communities also needed help, especially responding to non-member requests. Working with individuals around these important life events for secular humanistic Judaism takes knowledge, both Jewish and secular, in addition to the qualities of sensitivity, compassion, tact, and good humor. Now, other humanist organizations offer certification and ordination with very little training. We felt strongly that both our members and our leaders deserved more: better preparation for our leaders and better care for our members. We wanted our officiants to understand the basic ideas and the philosophy of secular humanistic Judaism, the history and development of the various life cycles in Judaism, and how to create a meaningful and powerful ceremony, as well as some basic skills in dealing with the emotions and conflicts that are inherent in these times of transition in people's and families' lives. We wanted a program that could be completed in about a year. The success story of that evaluation is the Officiant program. My role in this program is to teach philosophic guidance and counseling, a portion of the life cycle course, and review and evaluate the fieldwork, which consists of writing 4 different life cycle ceremonies. We have certified 8 officiants to date. Some were on their way to becoming leaders or rabbis, and tonight we are celebrating 8 additional students. For some, it is a step along the way to becoming certified leaders or rabbis. For others, it is a graduation as an officiant. I will now introduce 4 of them and welcome them to come forward one by one to receive their certificate and share a few thoughts with us. Then Rabbi Shalom will recognize the next 4 to do the same. So the first person we're recognizing tonight is Shira Collings. Shira lives in Philadelphia. She's quite quiet in class, but when she speaks, it's important. She's interested in serving needs of those not always recognized, on the fringe of various communities, and I give her the award for the most creative wedding ceremony ever. The second person is Melanie Goldberg. It's been many years since you first started to cover ceremonies, Melanie, when I wasn't available, and that is a show of my confidence in her. She gave tremendous tech support during class, and Melanie, your writing is so precise, and your capacity to say what you want, both clearly and poetically, is just wonderful. Ruth Howard. Your work shows your competence and your flair for dramatic timing. You showed your commitment by finishing your work in a timely manner. You were both in touch with the needs of the people you were celebrating, and your words were authentically reflected. I'm so happy that you've chosen to continue your work to become a certified leader. John Levine. I've known John for a very long time. John, your reliability reflects your commitment to humanistic Judaism. You were drawn to this program because you saw a need. You have a huge heart, and you are one of the kindest people I know. I'm so glad to recognize the first four. We're starting with Shira, then Melanie, then Ruth, then John.
Growing up, my relationship with Judaism was complex. Although I felt drawn to my Jewish heritage and culture, I also felt alienated from a lot of Jewish spaces due to being queer and an atheist. As an adult, my relationship with Judaism became even more fraught when I became engaged to someone who was not Jewish, which was also not welcome in many Jewish spaces. When I moved to Tampa, Florida for graduate school, I found my way to a local humanistic Jewish chavura and immediately felt more comfortable and at home than I'd felt in Jewish spaces previously. It was not just okay to be atheist, queer, and in an intercultural relationship, but actively embraced. My husband and I were eventually married by one of the facilitators of the chavura. Our wedding honored both of our backgrounds and celebrated us as an intercultural family. Finding a Jewish community where I feel welcome has been so empowering for me. I have grown to develop a sense of pride in my identity as a queer, intermarried Jew, as well as a love for participating in Jewish traditions in ways that feel aligned with my values. I decided to pursue training as an officiant because I would like to give back to others the experience that I am so grateful to have received myself. Throughout my studies in the Officiant program, I have learned so much about how to support community members through life's transitions in a way that makes them feel seen, heard, and embraced. I am thrilled to use the knowledge that I have gained to help others who have felt disconnected from Jewish spaces to feel affirmed and celebrated. One way that I plan to carry this out is by specializing in ceremonies that honor milestones that are not typically commemorated within Judaism. This could include gender transition, mental health or addiction recovery, pregnancy loss or infertility, deciding to be child-free, and even pet adoption. My hope is that this will help secular humanistic Judaism reach new people. As a psychotherapist, I have seen how ritual can transform experiences that are often isolating or unrecognized into opportunities for connection. I look forward to creating these opportunities for members of our community. I am so grateful to all of the IISHJ faculty and my classmates. I left every seminar feeling inspired by my instructors and classmates' passion for and vast knowledge of secular humanistic Judaism. I also want to extend a huge thank you to my husband, who strongly encouraged me to pursue this program despite my imposter syndrome. I wouldn't be here without his support. Finally, I want to thank my aunt and uncle and my brother-in-law for being here to support me today. It means so much to get to share this joyous occasion with all of you. Thank you.
Just to be clear, he is my brother, so, which he did not miss a chance to remind everybody in class that we are related, so, but no favors were given. I can trust you. He is honest to the core. So, thank you, Miriam, for reminding me about being concise, because this is what I wrote for today. So it was attending some funerals that I found very unsatisfying over the years and saying to myself, I can do better, that led me on this journey. And maybe even performing my dad's eulogy right here that really set me on the path. So several years ago, I attended the All-Faith Seminary and was ordained as an interfaith minister. But wanting to better serve this community and the growing number of people wanting more secular and personalized ceremonies of all kinds, I continued my education, and I'm so happy now to be receiving this certification as a humanistic Jewish officiant tonight. I want to thank the Congregation for Humanistic Judaism here in Metro Detroit and Rabbi Felix for their encouragement and support, and Miriam and Adam and all the rabbis who gave so much during our weekend sessions. I look forward to continuing to be Rabbi Felix's backup clergy. Thank you.
Hello, I come from Toronto at the moment, and farther back, I'm the offspring of a German Jewish Holocaust survivor who escaped to England, and a father who came from several generations of atheist, working class, Northern English labor organizers and workers. So I was brought up a staunchly atheist Jew, but until I got older, it didn't have any cultural practice behind it. It was just a kind of sensibility, mostly colored by awareness of my mother's Holocaust survivor background. So as I got older, I looked for community that suited me, and found an organization in Toronto called the United Jewish People's Order, which has a summer home called Camp Nivelt, and that's been, I guess, 30 plus years. My family's been part of that community, and we brought our children up in that community. Now I'm also a proud member of Areno in Toronto. The work I've done through my life has been in something that we call sometimes community arts or community engaged arts, which is bringing together artists and people at large to create art and express stories that are important or appealing or fun. So this Officiant course was truly a dream come true for me, and came the right thing coming at the right time. Combining my experiences and interest, really double passion for facilitating artful social ritual, which is really what making art with community is, and connecting more deeply with Judaism through a secular lens. And I was just, it also came during the pandemic when I would have come to Chicago for 4 weekends very happily. Kind of sad that I didn't get to, but it also made it very accessible to do because it was all online. And now I get to be here and meet everyone in person, which is such a thrill. And we all do get to meet each other in person. So I'm so grateful that you came up with it and that I was accepted and welcomed into this program and this community. The Officiant course was a goal in itself for me, but I've enjoyed the process so much that I've now applied to continue with the leadership program, and hope that I can do that. So thanks to all the instructors and guides who guided us through the program, Rabbi Adam, Rabbi Miriam, everybody else. And thanks to Eva Goldfinger, who was my rabbi mentor in Toronto and let me follow her around to many ceremonies, and also helped me get accredited as to legally marry people in Ontario, which I just got a few weeks ago, and proud of that, proud to have achieved that somehow. So, thanks to my husband, Steve, who's driven all the way down through a rather harrowing border crossing experience, which we could tell you about later if you want to ask us, and supported me through all of this and continues to support me. Thanks. Some of my children might be watching online, so hey, Shifra, hey, Laila, if you're there, hi. Thanks to them because they're wonderful and always part of all the journeys I made. And thanks to the people who've already invited and trusted me to help design and officiate their rites of passage and ceremonies, because I've got to do 2 weddings, and I've got 1 bat mitzvah girl, and I kind of officiated my mom's shiva. But, and I've got a 3rd wedding coming up, and I'm a very enthusiastic newbie or novice. I love doing it so far. I love it. Suits me, and so I look forward to doing more in response to the needs and desires of my secular Jewish and intercultural and varied families and friends and communities. Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom. It's great to be here, see so many familiar faces. It gives me great pleasure to address you as I complete the IISHJ Officiant program. Thank you to the Institute for creating this position that will provide more low-threshold opportunities for participation. I find that enabling participation, or volunticipation, as they say at Limmud, to be one of the best things about humanistic Judaism. I take this opportunity to share some thoughts about how I came to be here, what it means to me, and to remind you that you too can enroll in this program. My interest in the Officiant program began after collaborating in a graveside ceremony for a longtime member of my congregation, Kahal Breira. I'd say we created a meaningful service. The family was happy. After that experience, however, I realized I'd better be ready should the occasion arise again. I was motivated to get through the Officiant program quickly before senility set in. A friend at KB assured me that if I started showing signs of dementia, he would stop me before I embarrassed myself. We speak of how every generation has inherited an attic of Jewish heritage. I learned this analogy in an IISHJ seminar. Some items are fine just to throw away. Some are fine just the way they are, and some need a little updating. This ability to choose what we hang on to is a good thing, though, like my dad's tie, yesterday's discard might be tomorrow's keepsake. And this tie that I'm wearing was my father's. It has a high symbol on it. He said, John, why don't we get a couple of ties? And I said, forget it. But I rescued it from the attic. Klezmer music, I really had nothing. My Jewish childhood really left me with nothing. Klezmer music brought me back to Judaism. The profound sadness and the utter joy of the music captured my imagination in a way that the old stories hadn't. It reminded me of one of my favorite Jewish foods, eating a Hillel sandwich at the Passover Seder. I love that simple symbolism that life is a mixing of the bitter and the sweet, both musically and as food. Humanistic Judaism and the people I've met sealed the deal. Whether we were directly touched by the Holocaust or feel the effects as a people as a whole, we are well aware of what happened. In July, I will be traveling to the small city in the Netherlands where my family lived until World War II. We will be installing 4 stolperstein, which are literally stumbling stones that are approximately 4 by 4 inch cubes of concrete that are set just above the sidewalk grade. Each stolperstein is capped with a small brass plaque commemorating the last residence of choice for victims of the Holocaust. In the case of my immediate family, there will be a stolperstein for each grandparent, Solomon and Alida, as well as one for my Aunt Judith and one for my Uncle Henry, all who died in camps. My mother and just one of her sisters survived the war. I will be working with the organizers to create a meaningful ceremony that reflects my family's secular values and the Jewish custom of belonging to the local synagogue without actually attending. I will be including knowledge gained here in my contribution to the ceremony. When my children were born, I felt the urge to expose them to some Judaism in spite of the Holocaust, or maybe because of it. I had no problem with the inevitability of them learning plenty of Christianity that they would absorb through our culture and our mixed family. At the same time, I wanted them to know about their Jewish heritage as well. And now I feel the same about my grandchildren. If it's important, why? So I've been engaged for the last 40 years in trying to figure out what parts of my inherited Jewish attic are worth passing along, because no one ever said it was going to be easy being Jewish. The IISHJ has provided innumerable opportunities to study and learn. I enjoy following impulse and connecting the dots. I remember my dad telling my brother and me to each grow up and act like a mensch. I've considered his words and why he told us to act like a mensch, but never told us to be a mensch. I thought about this and how he used to repeat it, not as if it was an original thought of his, but as if it was the family maxim to be passed down through the generations. Perhaps he had been told the same thing by his elders. It took some time before I understood the message, that one needn't be a mensch to act like one, and perhaps by growing up and acting like a mensch, we may become one. Focusing on what we do versus what we are is one of the really great ideas of Judaism. And how about this, for instance, Hillel's, if I'm not for myself, who will be? If I'm only for myself, what am I? If not now, when? As if in response, Anne Frank wrote, how wonderful it is that nobody need wait a single moment before starting to improve the world. Commitment followed by action, if not now, when, is something that keeps me coming back to humanistic Judaism. And every year I ask myself whether I'm up for it. I ask myself, is it worth it? Because it's up to me, just as it is up to each one of us. I also like to work with others. Lucky for me, humanistic Judaism requires plenty of committee work. One of my continuing congregational roles is to encourage and support member participation in creating our community. It turns out I have a talent for finding things for others to do. And my feelings don't get hurt if you say no. As a lay-led congregation, volunteerism is key to our strength. We are developing a curriculum for our new members club where we introduce new members to each other, to our greater Boston congregation, and to the basic ideas of humanistic Judaism. I will also continue to work with volunteers who lead our regular community gathering services, as well as supporting a group of congregants to create high holiday reflections. We have 5 services with space for 5 speakers, usually 3 adults and 2 of our youth. There's also work on our liturgy committee, which systematically churns out revised holiday services. All of these activities are enhanced by materials supplied by the Officiant program. I could go on. Instead, I'd like to close now by thanking those of you who've encouraged and supported me in my quest to find meaning in my Jewish heritage. Family, who allowed me to take time away for classes in writing, friends who have been willing to actively listen to my ramblings, and fellow students and teachers who have been informative and available for questions and support. I particularly appreciate your generosity. I look forward to continuing to read, study, and volunteer. Thank you.
Is it moot to say Shabbat Shalom after 30 minutes? It's wonderful to be back here at the Birmingham Temple, where I grew up, where I had my bar mitzvah on this bima, was married here as well, was ordained here as well, and now I stand on the verge of my 400th wedding. So I have good news for Ruth Howard. It's still fun. It's still fun to do. Well, I'm here to introduce our second group of 4 officiants. The first is James McDevitt Phelps. I first met James online, so it's good to see him in 3 dimensions now, which is the case for many people in this room, actually. James has been zooming into classes that I've been offering through my congregation in the Chicago area from Florida, and we first met through those classes. He was one of our most regular attendees and a very diligent student and adult learner, and so it's been wonderful that James has pursued this Officiant program, and Miriam and I are working on him to possibly make a sequel. Our second officiant in the second batch is Randy Maxwell, and by the way, the order doesn't make any sense alphabetically, so don't worry about it. The second is Randy Maxwell, who has come here from Toronto. He has a deep and extensive experience in media and in video, and it turns out that he had witnessed so many Orenu Congregation for Humanistic Judaism mitzvah celebrations while video recording them for 20 years, 25 years, that he decided, you know what, I can do that. And I would enjoy doing that. And so the next chapter in his life will be shifting into this world of officiating life cycle events and not just standing behind the camera, but actually being in front of it. Our third officiant graduate is someone who is marking a way station in his progress. This will be a stepping stone toward the leadership program and ultimately, hopefully, a humanistic rabbinate. It's Martin DiMaggio, who comes to us from London, and not London, Ontario, but, well, he did come from London, Ontario yesterday, but he actually comes from the United Kingdom. He's been very involved in the online world of humanistic Judaism through Facebook and through the online Spinoza Chavurah. He's been wonderfully creative in creating liturgy in Hebrew and in English and in Ladino. He's a linguist as well as a mensch, and so it's wonderful to have Martin here to be able to celebrate together. And finally, we will recognize Risa Morris, who is also coming from Toronto. She is a career educator who has retired from that chapter in her life, although she's continuing as the education director of Oreno Congregation in Toronto, and she's also continuing on to the leadership program. And I will use this opportunity for a shameless plug. If you would like to find out more about the Officiant or leadership programs, visit www.iishj.org. And so, James, please.
Good evening, everyone. About 1 year ago, at last year's in-person SHJ board meeting in this very building, I was sitting next to Rabbi Miriam during a meal when she suggested I apply for the IISHJ Officiant program. At first, I was a little hesitant. Did I have the time and money to take this on right then? I just graduated from a university program a few months before and started a new job only the previous month. But the more I looked into it, the more I knew I wanted to apply. At the time, I was beginning to work at starting a humanistic Jewish community in the greater Orlando area, and I believed that the Officiant program would help me better serve that community. I applied for the program, got accepted, and started taking classes at the same time as I was working on building the new community. We had our first event, a small tashlich service, in September of 2023, not long after I completed my first course in the program and before I started the second. As I progressed in the program, we progressed as a community. We're still very small with 4 regular attendees, but we've now had 4 events, and I think we're starting to get the hang of things. I'm very excited about what the future holds for us, and I'm confident my time in the IISHJ Officiant program will prove useful in helping us flourish and grow. I don't intend for this to be the end of my education. I plan to keep learning and growing my skills. I plan for our little Central Florida community to keep growing. And I plan to use my new knowledge and skills to provide humanistic Jewish life cycle ceremonies to the members of my community, both my secular and humanistic Jews of Central Florida community and the community at large. So I would like to thank first Rabbi Miriam for pushing me towards this program in the first place. I would like to thank all the people in the wider SHJ community who have made this such a beloved home for me. And I would like to thank the current members of the fledgling secular and humanistic Jews of Central Florida community. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You know, growing up in the 1960s in a conservative, Orthodox-leaning home in Toronto, going to Cheder after school during the day, keeping kosher, observant on all the holidays, I was really made to feel guilty if I didn't accept everything as it was written in the Torah, handed down over thousands of years. You know, for me, I always found these services way too long, too repetitive, too boring, too meaningless. But I felt trapped and obligated by my family's traditions. Then I got married to my wife, Vivian. And we wanted to instill Jewish values in our 5 children. So we stuck with conservative synagogue memberships. Today, 4 of our kids are married, 3 to non-Jews. And those partners are all great. Don't get me wrong. They take part in our traditions and they honor our values. For the longest time, I have to admit, I didn't believe in intermarriage because I had been taught, it had been burned into my psyche, that would water down and eventually eliminate the Jewish race. Let's face it, a lot of us were told this. But then I found secular humanistic Judaism. And among the things I learned is that if you turn your back on the non-Jewish partner, the Jewish one will leave too. But if you embrace the Gentile, you'll keep the Jewish family. One of my friends calls secular humanistic Judaism Jew-light. I said, no, it's not Jew-light, it's Jewish enlightenment. Right? Because when I started to read the teachings of Sherwin Wine and Mordecai Kaplan, who founded Reconstructionist Judaism more than 100 years ago, I started to realize there's a whole new way that we're allowed to reinterpret what we can and should believe about being non-theistic, embracing the LGBTQ plus community, egalitarianism, tikkun olam, and our non-Jewish members. What we believe is leading, not following. It's not revolution, it's evolution. I was asked to highlight what I see myself doing in my role as an officiant. I've been involved peripherally in the funeral industry for more than 40 years, both Jewish and non-Jewish. So I see a role leading funeral services on days when this is probably people's darkest time in their lives. If you've done that for a long time, it's not hard to get past that and deal with it. And also on the brighter side, doing weddings and bar mitzvahs, having, as Rabbi Shalom mentioned, having filmed untold numbers of life cycle events during my professional career. In closing, I would like to sincerely thank all the rabbis who have taught and coached me through the many hours of Zoom sessions and private phone calls, especially Rabbi Adam Sholem, Miriam Jerris, Jeffrey Falick, and Eva Goldfinger, who is up in Iceland at this time. And I'd also like to congratulate everyone else in my cohort, some of whom are here this evening, and thank them for their engaging input and ideas throughout the classes. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
I first found humanistic Judaism when I was 20 years old and read Rabbi Sherwin Wine's Judaism Beyond God, probably like a lot of people in this room. Every page reflected beliefs that I hadn't realized I held. I was very excited to find out that there was a community in Birmingham, as I lived in Birmingham at the time, and I liked to walk to shul. I was quite disappointed when I learnt that the walk would take months, be highly dangerous, and the required crossing of the Bering Strait could only be undertaken during winter. Over to plan B, which meant searching for whatever materials I could download from the then easier to use internet. And I gradually began integrating humanistic Jewish values and philosophy into my Jewish life. As the years passed, there seemed to be no community in the UK, so I was content to go to the liberal shul that I was used to and continue to include humanistic blessings and readings into my Friday night and high holidays home observance. I had never been to a humanistic Jewish service, especially not one led by someone else. And when 2020 hit, avenues opened up online for connecting with others, and my first Friday night service was at City Congregation in New York. It was, however, at midnight my time. But it was still a wonderful experience. Soon thereafter, various groups began forming via Zoom, and the rabbi of my local liberal synagogue in London asked me to lead a service. I agreed, and although the service went well, there were some people who had never heard of humanistic Judaism. They expressed their discomfort with a service that didn't mention the God they didn't believe in. It was more appropriate, they stated, to do a reading in which we address the God we aren't sure exists and tell him as such, and then say that we will continue to pray to him and tell him that he is so blessed to have commanded us to light candles. My own feelings grew stronger, that I was more and more uncomfortable with not meaning what I say, and I was back to the drawing board. A few months later, I was asked to lead a service at Spinoza Chavurah, a purely online community with regular Zoom services, and I nervously volunteered, not quite sure how my particular style would be received. I had found that I was somewhat too humanist for synagogues in the UK, and too Jewish for humanists. On top of which, I unashamedly bring with me elements of my Italian and Sephardi Judaism wherever I lead. challenging the assumptions that abound in some spaces that Ashkenazi Judaism is the norm. The feedback I got from the community at Spinoza Chavurah inspired me to reach out to IISHJ to apply to the leadership course. It's, by the way, taken me 2 years to realize that it's not SHJ, the course, it's IISHJ. People had started relating to me as a community leader. I had congregants phoning me, asking me to use my forms of Kaddish, and I had people looking to me for guidance on how to adopt Judaism whilst avoiding cultural appropriation. So I knew that I needed to develop and grow if I was to continue to provide this much-needed service. Leading any community is challenging, and doing so with an international online-based community comes with its unique challenges. Yet it is also a great platform which enables people all across the world to connect, meeting the needs of a wide variety of people from different backgrounds who speak different languages, some of whom are Sephardi, some who have been traumatized by traditional religions, and others who love their traditions, and some of whom have different accessibility needs, require skills that have pushed me to do better and taken me beyond my personal creative liturgy projects that has been my humanistic Judaism for 2 decades. Leading requires compassion, patience, knowledge, and an ability to respond to each person's needs proactively and with a great deal of reflexivity. Studying for this course remotely has at times been difficult, but it has enriched me and I have enjoyed it immensely. It has also enabled me to make connections and community in ways that were previously impossible. I am eternally grateful to Chief Rabbi Miriam Jerris, I always call her Chief Rabbi, and Rabbi Adam Shalom for their encouragement and support. And I'd also like to thank Rabbi Jeffrey Falik and Rabbi Tzemach Yoreh, who shares my passion for liturgy. I am also grateful to my friend Risa Morris, who I met because of this course, and who has so generously given me a place to stay in Toronto, and who has been an invaluable Chevruta partner throughout my journey. We in fact meet every Wednesday. We have met every Wednesday for the last 18 months or so. I'd also like to thank my mother who is watching and Kurt who is watching online. I hope to continue lifelong learning in how to be of service to the community and to continue helping others feel less lonely in their Jewish journeys. I've come halfway across the globe to be a congregant at my first humanistic Jewish service, where my fellow congregants have actual limbs and bodies. This temple is such an important and historical place, and words cannot express how much it means to me to finally see this place in real life. I mentioned earlier that I feel like I'm at the Kotel. And in some ways it really is like that for me. And I am incredibly honored to be able to now include myself officially in SHJ's or IISHJ's leadership team. Thank you. Buen Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom.
I came to SHJ because of my child. She was being bullied at school for being Jewish. And they said to me, if I'm going to be different, I want to know why I'm different, and I want to know who I am. And so we needed to find a Sunday school and a Jewish school so they can find out more about what it meant. And Ureinu in Toronto was the perfect fit. I was raised Reform and had a very strong social action background. And my husband is a devout atheist. And we grew to love Ureinu. And the late Steve Shabes, the principal of the school, he made us feel right at home. And then I ended up teaching at the school because they needed a teacher. So please, could you teach? And as we know, with all of our communities, you help where you can. And then he needed help running the school. And then, during those years that we're not allowed to mention, I ran a school on Zoom. And when Steve passed away, I became principal. During a conversation with Rabbi Karen Levy, she asked me, what was I going to do after I retired from teaching? I told her I was going to be a massage therapist. She said, oh? Have you ever considered becoming an officiant? I said, no. Rabbi Eva Goldfinger asked me the same question. And here I am. I need to thank both Karen and Eva for being my mentors and my cheerleaders. I need to thank my family for also cheering me on. Adam and Miriam, Thank you both for your very thoughtful and extremely useful curriculum and delivering all of it with such knowledge. I also need to thank Arenu for sponsoring me through this whole process. And of course, as you've heard, I need to thank Martin, my Chavruta partner from across the pond. Thank you for our weekly chats. Sometimes I was not quite as bushy-eyed as I should be at 7:30 in the morning, but you've pushed me to think deeper and to question without judgment. Thank you all for now allowing me to make the world a better place, one life cycle moment at a time.